Yes, thank you so much, Jen, and also thanks again to Barb for convincing Jen to spend some time with us this morning. My name is Horst Stipp. I'm part of the ARF's research group. It's a real pleasure to be here this morning, and you're going to see me again in a little while, talking about, with my colleague Jasper, about the ARF's How Advertising Works project, and our new research on the importance of context effects, and how important it is to have a connection between the emotions of the media user and your advertising, which is also a theme that we just heard. So because of that focus in our research, it's a special privilege and pleasure to introduce the next presentation, and I was hoping that the slide would come up, and maybe it does, and there we go. So please join me in welcoming our next two presenters, Pellegrini from Simmons and Bill Harvey, who are presenting research on exactly the same topic, namely how can we improve the impact of our advertising by connecting with the emotions of the media user. So thank you very much for spending time with us too, and the stage is yours.
Grab this. Hi everyone, good morning. First, thank you to the ARF for letting us share our findings with you this morning. Jennifer had sent me an email saying you had to wear jeans, it was the dress code, but I wore the wrong brand, but come on. When I get that check, I'll change the brand. Today we're going to talk to you about, the session is called Improving Ad Effectiveness Through Psychological Triggers. So obviously we're going to talk about psychographics and the research that we've been doing. Simmons, along with our partners at RMT, and Bill has been a strategic advisor, and so I'm very pleased to be sharing the stage with someone who I've been following for some time in my career, and it was now a part of doing our research with us. What we'll do is take you through a couple of things right away so that you know what hopefully you'll take away from this presentation. 5 points. That holistic psychographics, which is what we're calling the new set of psychographics that we've tested and that we're going to show you some of those initial results today, predict brand choice. Okay? We tested about 204 new psychographics along with about 570 that had been already in our national consumer study for some time, but most of these had been derived from product usage that our agencies and advertisers and media clients had asked us to ask questions about. We also know that psychographics can be derived from TV program choice, and this is the work that Bill's going to talk about in his section of the presentation called driver tags, where now there's psychographic metadata embedded within ads and content. So it spreads the use of psychographics beyond persons and groups of persons and targets all the way to creative and ad design. We'll show you how to optimize activation of psychographics to maximize ROI, and then we'll provide a little bit of evidence that's actually a foreshadowing of a presentation that the ARF will give in about an hour. So the rest of the 20-25 minutes or so that we'll be speaking looks like this. I'll tell you a little bit about consumer psychographics, and so that we're all on the same page, and why are they important. Then we'll talk about how we developed the holistic consumer psychographics. A big shout out to Stephen Millman, who heads our measurement science team. He joined us a few months ago, and about day 2 I said, by the way, we're doing this really huge psychographic study, and I need 120,000 logistic regression models built by the time we go to ARF. So he's recovering now after that feat of modeling. And then finally, Bill will take us through the last part of the presentation through using holistic consumer psychographics to maximize ROI, and he's got some really cool stuff to show. Okay, so the standard definition of consumer psychographics is the study and classification of people according to their attitudes, aspirations, and other psychological criteria. So their motivations. Okay? Now, Simmons is not the only company that tries to collect this. It's very difficult. You have to do survey research. You have to ask people. In some cases, you can see through social media. So we're partnering with folks like CubeU, plug here, we just announced a partnership today. Purely coincidental that the press release went out today while I'm on stage here at ARF. But the point is, you can ask people, but so much is going on now in social media that you really do need partners that and vendors like CubeU that or collect psychographic data online from millions and millions of folks so that the latency is very quick. But we know that advertisers spend in advertising, there's an enormous amount of money spent on demographic profiles and brand usage metrics rather than psychological ones, okay? But we know as consumer and media researchers in the audience that psychographics do help and predict brand choice, and in many cases are much more differentiating than pure demographics themselves. I can be demographic twins with someone and have a completely different media usage, completely different brand choices. So the psychographics are actually better predictors and better discriminators, and that's what this study is all about. So we'll use this metaphor a couple of times today in the presentation. It's a campfire storyteller. So the children in the campfire are the audience we're looking for. They have certain motivations and aspirations, and the storyteller is the ad. It is the brand that's trying to get their attention. What are their motivations? What are their aspirations? What will resonate with them? We'll go back to this metaphor a couple of times. What traditional psychographics do is they allow you to help you understand who that audience is. Okay, so those are the first steps in what we call 4 different turning points in the road to ROI with advertising. If you understand the motivations and aspirations of your audience, so using holistic psychographics, you would look at which of the psychographics that we've tested actually predict brand choice best. And you do that through the statistical modeling that we've done. But you can also connect that to the optimal media mix and also optimal creative. So what we're trying to do is take the psychographics that are so powerful and move them downstream to designing the creative, to the ad content, and how it resonates well with the media content. We'll go back to this later. Remember this metaphor, and Bill will be showing you more about that. So why are psychographics important? Well, we know that they predict the why of brand choice, and they predict it better than pure demographics or even other media usage and product usage on its own. Psychographics predict brand use, and they can be used at the 4 turning points. So understanding the audience, targeting that particular audience based on psychographic profiles, very careful ones, having the right creative that resonates well with the optimal media mix. Those 4 turning points are the ones that we'll focus on through the presentation. And finally, you can use those variables to help maximize ROI. Now, let me give you some examples of just the indices and how discriminating psychographics can be. Some of these are the traditional psychographics that we've been collecting for some time in our national consumer study, and others are newer ones. This one is from in the Wharton School of Business, Americus Reed has a brand love a psychological profile that's gotten quite popular, and Bill helped us scale that so we could ask respondents about it. And this is the indices that come from the question, I use products to show others who I am and who I aspire to be. And you can see for a particular sub-brand of Hyundai, the index is over 500. Right? Whereas others like Kia and VW, it's actually below the base of 100. So highly discriminating, even for obviously things, everybody owns a car and everybody has a sub-brand, but they have very different motivations for doing that. There's also discriminating power amongst extremely popular mainstream brands. So we took the brand name out of this, but the auto brand is one that you've all heard of that's very, very popular seller, and the beverage brand is super popular, everybody would know it. If you just looked at the demographic profiles or even the media usage profiles, they would be very flat. Everybody drinks this beverage and a lot of people own this vehicle. But if you dig deeper into the psychographics, for auto brand A, it indexes at almost 300 for I don't like art, I find it difficult to stay focused. And through psychics, we can communicate with the dead. Okay, so you stay away from people who drive that car, but on the brand B, I rush through activities without being attentive. I have a rich, complex inner life. I often feel blue. They're not as high, but they're still in the 140s, almost 150. Even at the program viewership level, psychographics are discriminating. So here you have two crime dramas. They are different, Gotham and First 48. The Gotham viewer feels very alone in the world to the extent that they don't even eat regular meals with their family, whereas First 48 is a highly structured drama. There's a certain pacing in it, right? If you watch it, you know what's going to happen after each commercial. They prefer fast food home cooking. They're tense, nervous, and high-strung. Maybe it's the pacing of the program that keeps them focused. Okay, so how did we develop holistic psychographics? Well, we knew that we had about 570, and when many of our agency clients and media clients use these extensively, but there had never been a step back where we looked at and reviewed all the literature, both in marketing science, in psychology, and Bill brought that to us as a strategic advisor. So we wanted to make sure that they were not just product specific and things that our agency clients had needed in the past, but that had we scoured all of the literature and looked at many other scales that were measuring personality traits and psychographics. And we were able to do that. We brought in a lot of tests, turned them into questions that we could ask people, and we recontacted our panelists. So it becomes a single source study, very high quality study that had an extremely strong response rate. One of the things that we looked at were from the Wharton School, Americus Reed's brand love scale, also Ocean, the big five, that openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and mine, neurotic. So those were all included. And then we did a really big statistical analysis of these. Okay, this is where Stephen Millman and his team and a whole group of folks from Simmons got involved. We tested our existing and our new psychographics against brand choice that was already captured in the NCS, and there were 8,000 brands there, so it's a huge undertaking. The models turned out are logistic regressions, of course, because you either chose the brand or you didn't, and that allows us to evaluate the independent effect of each psychographic question on the likelihood of brand use, controlling for demographics, because of course we measure a complete set of demographics on all of our respondents. We looked at an extended analysis at those that had a 90% confidence level on the likelihood of brand use, and it was really great findings, and we're going to show you some of those now. So just to make sure everyone's on the same page with me, we started with a huge lit review. We looked at the different scales and validations that were out there in the literature that we had not been measuring yet. We did a big recontact or re-interview with existing NCS respondents. We also scored them with driver tags. Bill will tell you a bit more about that. That's essentially psychographic metadata captured within ads and within media. And then we did the big models. Okay, so here, this is, if you see a word in that pattern of dots, let me know. This is essentially 30 or so brands. So remember, there's 8,000, so there's way too much to tell you. So we're going to show you how we started to take a deeper look at this. There's 30 brands going across the x-axis there. And up and down the y-axis, those points are different percentages, and that is the change in likelihood of brand usage per unit change in the independent psychographic variable. So you could get it down to a percentage that's additive, not multiplicative, across the different psychographic questions, which allows you to now, with some statistical power, build the right set of psychographics that are best predict brand use. Okay, so you can see that that scale on the y-axis actually goes from 24 to minus 24. So double-digit percentage differences are captured, and there's 14 different psychographics here. Let's dig deeper into this. Those 14 psychographic questions relate to environment and eco-friendliness. So in this diagram that'll build slowly, we've got just 4 different auto brands, okay? And the one on the far left, you can see is a Chevy brand. It's actually the Chevy Geo. But let's pick one of the questions from the right side. I don't mean that to be an eye chart, but the fourth one down is, each of us has a personal obligation to do what we can to be environmentally responsible. Okay. You see that from the Chevy Geo brand, response, it's below 0. But if you go all the way over to Toyota, and you can imagine which of the sub-brands of Toyota this is, that indexes at almost 30% more likelihood of brand choice for someone who claims that psychographic trait where they want us to be environmentally responsible. So you can see how differentiating it is across the different, and there's sub-brands within that. Okay. How else can we show you the power of being able to discriminate the right psychographic mix? Well, those statistics are additive. So if you take the same 14 eco-friendly psychographic questions and we just focus in on now one brand, okay, so this is the Chevy Geo, you see that across the first 6 questions, there's an additive component. You're more likely to select that brand based on those eco-friendly psychographics. Packaging for products should be recycled. I often choose methods of transportation that are friendlier to the environment. But as you go further into those questions, you actually get a negative impact of brand choice. So had you chosen all of them, your net would actually be -13. You're actually picking a target group that's less likely to choose your brand. So you have to be very careful, and with holistic psychographics, you are able to see this. Okay, so let me wrap up and turn things over to Bill. What you basically have with holistic psychographics is evidence of brand choice, the statistical power of brand choice, being able to group the correct psychographics together. You have a much wider set of psychographics now. It's holistic in the sense that it looked at the academic literature, it looked at marketing literature. We turned these scales into questions we could ask through a recontact. So now you've got the 570 or so that we had before. The other pie, you've got another 204 that includes brand love. We had the ocean, the big 5, augmenters, reducers, the work of Keith Stanovich at University of Toronto. Questions on same-sex marriage, marijuana. I'm Canadian and we're about to legalize marijuana. Cultural fondness, mixed ethnicity marriage, living together. And then the last set are 265 driver tags, which, as I mentioned, Bill will get into in some detail. He's the inventor of these, and we're thrilled to have them integrated because they allow us to go through those 4 turning points of the advertising model where you can maximize ROI and integrate metadata on psychographics. So on that note, I'm going to turn things over to Bill.
Thank you, Pat. So why did we do this in the first place? What is the importance? Creative is the biggest part of ROI. And we are not operationalizing that in any effective way right now to maximize ROI. We're concentrating on the media mix and media targeting. Those are the 2 things that we've learned how to control. And we obviously have to figure out how do we control the creative part and the context part, because that's where the biggest bang is going to come. So what are the tools that will allow us to gain leverage on that? How can we deconstruct an ad into its component parts in a relevant way? That's where psychographics and driver tags come in. There are really 4 servings of this pie here. Let's start with the individual. Everything starts and ends with the individual. We're reaching one person at a time. That person belongs to, we're social creatures, to various groups. So you can roll that individual up into product users. You can roll it up to heavy product users. You can roll it up to brand users. So if you have psychographics from a questionnaire on every individual in a, let's say, national probability sample, you can then roll it up to look at what is it from my brand, what is it from people who used to be my brand, what is it from my point competitor who's beating me up in the marketplace. But then there's the ad and the media environment. Now they're the stimuli. That's the most important part, the part that you can really control. But up till now, there's been no way of putting psychographics on them. So you can put psychographics on the individual and you can put it on the product users and the brand users, but you can't put it on the ad and you can't put it on the media environment. How are we going to make this all work? So that's why driver tags exist, to be able to code ads psychographically and code media environments psychographically. So now, and incidentally, driver tags can also be put on all 4 of these slices. We call that the scoring process. So any source of TV viewing data by program, such as Simmons, which measures all the programs on television, the major programs on television, hundreds of programs, looks at each respondent based on which programs they view. And RMT, my company, has placed driver tags, and I'll explain how, on each of those programs. So you get a score. If driver tag 1 shows up in all the programs you watch, you're going to get a very high score on driver tag 1. So you can move driver tags onto the individual, therefore you can roll it up. So the only type of psychographics that actually exists as connectivity across all 4 of these are the driver tags. But it's a part of the holistic psychographics. So Simmons started with an enormous psychographic coverage to begin with, and then by means of this literature review, brought in all of the other psychographics that have been well validated by science, inside and outside our industry, across science and academia. Incidentally, just let me stop for a moment and say that big data, where there are content measurements, such as clickstream data, set-top box data, server-side data, all of that allows you to use driver tags, and therefore big data has driver tags, and therefore driver tags can be placed on individuals or cookies, and so on and so forth. So life is all about storytelling. Story is the shape of life. Our brains are designed to think in stories. Telling a story in an ad is the way to create persuasion and yearning and ROI. Telling it the right way and to the right people with the psychological triggers that affect their psychological makeup, their motivations. So you have to put psychographics on people and meta tags on content. And imagine, let me just go back here for a second, that if you align all of this, if the psychographics are aligned across individuals, your product target, the ad, and the media environment, you've created a laser-like effect of alignment that has never been done before. But this is ultimately the method for maximization of ROI. So what are driver tags? Where did they come from? We started with the Oxford on a Bridge dictionary. There are over 1 million words in the English language. We created a set of criteria to define what we meant by a psychological word. We gave that to 20 coders. We paid them money. We sat them down. Each of them had assigned pages in these 22 volumes of the Oxford on a Bridge dictionary. They pulled out over 13,000 words. We then used Roget's thesaurus to boil that down by synonyms to 10,000 words. We then did national probability sampling, semantic differential scaling. Each respondent rated themselves how well each of 1,000 words described them. We did a factor analysis, which boiled this all down to 1,562 words. We then worked with a large cable operator and set-top box data and created a personalized program recommender where the viewer could press the A button on their remote, and within a second, our system, based on their previous program viewing and the 1,562 meta tags we had put on these programs, we then made a recommendation of which program coming up in the next time period, which they had never watched before, according to their set-top box data, was most likely to fit their profile of the meta tags that they view. They then could, to train the system better, they could say bad robot by pressing the C button, or good robot by pressing the B button, and that would allow the machine learning algorithm to more quickly learn their preferences and make better recommendations. So right away we were getting over 90% good robot, so satisfaction. But the most important moment came when we saw that almost 1 out of 5 of the recommendations converted to a loyal viewer of the recommended program, because we knew that was pay dirt. The average tune-in advertising produces something like a 3% conversion rate. So almost a 20% conversion rate is history. So then we did a statistical analysis to see what coefficients would you place on each of the 1,562 words to best predict those conversions. And we found out that only 265 of those words had all the power. Those we call driver tags. That's where the driver tags came from. When we began to use them at RMT 2 years ago. We did an analysis to see, adjusted R-squared analysis to see how well do they predict Nielsen ratings. Well, it's a 0.76 adjusted R-squared, so we're explaining 76% of the variance in Nielsen ratings with driver tags. How do the coders put a driver tag, the RMT coders put a driver tag on a program or an ad? They have to view the ad or the program at least 3 times. In other words, 3 different episodes of a program series or repetitive 3-time viewing of a given ad. 3 different coders go through the list of 265 driver tags and decide which ones to put on the ad or program. 2 out of 3 coders agreeing means we actually take that tag on that program or other piece of content, website, long-form content, whatever it might be. I'm not going to talk much about this slide because Jasper and Horst are going to give you a lot of insight about it. But essentially what we did here with Turner and Nielsen Catalina was to see that out of 700 or so ad placements made in the 3rd quarter of 2016 by 2 different soft drink brands, if you broke them into deciles by the degree to which the ads in the driver tags in the ad were mirrored in the program in which it was placed, we found the inflection point for ROI was 60%. If at least 60% of the ads driver tags are in the program, you're going to get a boost of an average of 36% in ROI. Now, Turner also tested some other ways of boosting ROI in that same analysis. One was LEAP, which measures emotional attachment, which is questionnaire-based. They got a 5% ROI lift there. They tested the Nielsen Quad Reports, a measure of program loyalty, usually correlated with high ratings, and they found for one of the brands about a 5% increase, and the other brand actually went down for some reason based on the quad scores. Driver tags, like psychographics, tend to have very large indices. You know, we're used to seeing indices in a range of, 130 is really good. With driver tags and psychographics, the new psychographics that we've brought in from the world of science, you see 500 indices, you see 10 indices quite frequently. Now, here's an interesting situation. Different brands, owners, or users have different numbers of driver tags that show up with high indices. So Lincoln, for example, has a bevy of different highly indexed driver tags. So in the consideration of what to put in a Lincoln ad, there's a lot of psychological nuances that ought to be considered. I could show you another slide which shows the exact opposite, that Lincoln also needs to avoid many driver tags. Interestingly, over at the other end of this scale, you see brands like Popeyes, Macy's, and Heineken only need a very few specific psychological nuances in their ads. So the 4 stages in activating the maximum of ROI are, first of all, look at the data. Look at the psychographic and the driver tag data at your brand's users, your brand's heavy swing purchasers, your competing brand's users, the heavy users in the category. Look at people who aren't yet your brand's users, or maybe not even category users, and how they might have some similar psychologies. And then decide, based on the ads you've used in the past and your recent thinking about ads and what your competitors are doing, to decide a strategy in terms of who's the probably most sales responsive target based on this information. Both based on their product purchase and on their psychographics. So define your target for the biggest ROI. Create ads then, create a briefing based on all of this rich information for your agency so they can create ads with the right psychological triggers. Select media based on that target, which is both product and psychographics, and on the resonance, as we've seen. 28% lift is the average that TRA got in targeting heavy swing purchasers. In some cases it was in the hundreds, but that was the average. 36% additive to that brings you up to 64% if you follow that. We don't yet have the ROI lift values for the first 3. We're working on that. We'd like to work with a few of our clients on that, maybe even have results by June. We invite you to ask us questions about what have we found out about your brand. Come up after this, and we'll be happy to share the information with you. Turner is very interested in doing more of this work. We'll work with any of you who would like to try to test this in the real world. And
spoiler alert, spoiler alert. If you watch Game of Thrones, turn away.
Yeah.
Turn away.
You don't want to see this if you watch Game of Thrones. So understand the motivations of your audience. Strategize to define your target audience according to that knowledge and purchase patterns. Design creative to persuade that target. And select media to maximize ROI, both in terms of the targeting and the resonance. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
We finished right on time.